We are back here on League Unlock, and we have reached the top 4 territory for LEC Preseason Power Rankings. I think the top 4, if you didn't have one of these 4 teams on paper finishing in that top 4 spot, you'd be a little bit crazy. You can argue the order of, well, really just 4 and 3. But outside of that, it seems pretty set. But this one, listen, 3 and 4 was very difficult to argue either way. There can be cases made for both squads being higher than the other, but we ended up throwing Origen in at number 4, and they might be the winners of the offseason in the LEC. Obviously, it's easier to say that because these are proven performers as opposed to when you're looking at the Mad Lions or Vitality, where it's full of rookies who might end up being even better than some of the veterans in the scene. But on paper, before a single game has been played on the Rift, you might argue, and I might agree, that Origen won the offseason. Huge acquisitions with Xerxes and Upset coming over, and Patrick was not an issue. He wasn't one of the main problems with Origen last year, but Upset is fully cemented as a top 380 carry in Europe and has been for a few splits now. So anytime you can get him onto your roster, that is absolutely massive. And Xerxes, of course, just performed on the international stage, top 8 at Worlds, and with Broxagon is pretty firmly cemented as the second best jungler in Europe behind Jankos. You have the potential. The potential is the key word with Origen in having a top 3 player in pretty much all of the 4 major roles. The main question mark is, of course, the first ever OPL player coming over to the LEC in Destiny. And if you don't know much about him, he has been completely dominant, been on multiple different teams. He's a 3-time OPL champion, and he's done it with completely different rosters around him. He's played with different bot laners. He's been to MSI once and 2 world championships, and he has a 26-7 career record on Recon. That is a 63% win rate. And pairing him with Upset, that's still a big question mark, but Upset has performed with whatever support is around him. I don't think that's going to be any different with Destiny. And I'm actually a fan of the Destiny signing to go along with Xerxes and Upset, because when you really think about it, support has been one of the weakest roles that we've seen in the last couple of years around Europe. Once you get outside of that top 2 and 3, sure, Mickey and Hylissang are great. Maybe Norscarin or Vander, you throw that in. But after that, it's a pretty sizable dip in talent level and performance that we've seen over the last couple of years. So why not take a risk? Why settle for some lower tier support in Europe when you can say, let's take a shot at a guy who has worked hard, been a professional for 3-4 years now in one of these emerging regions and has dominated that league. Let's give it an opportunity to be on a stacked roster like this and see how we can perform against better competition, because when you come in as an OPL squad and go up against some of these major region teams at MSI or Worlds, it's not quite the same, because even if you're a star support, you're outmatched in a lot of these other roles. So very excited to see how Destiny performs with this roster. The reason Origen's only at number 4 is Destiny is still a question mark, but I have faith in him performing. And anytime you're changing 3/5 of your roster, it's not guaranteed that the synergy is going to work. Even though this roster looks great, there's a lot of changes, and the teams above them just, quite frankly, made way less changes, and the core is all still there for the entirety of the top 3 on these power rankings. There's just less volatility when you're not doing these sweeping changes across the board. Mithy obviously also gone as well, who was one of the big voices in Origen. Coach Quixoto is still going to be there. Deficio is still there. Xpeke is still there. So that core management team is sticking there with Origen, and you imagine that will probably be the case for a long time coming. Origen had an interesting 2019, and I want to say successful. I mean, spring, absolutely. They get to the finals and lose the fastest European finals in history to G2, but we know that ended up not being a fluke because G2 was insane. They looked to be bouncing back in summer and make a playoff run until they went 1-4, including 0-2 when they needed to win one game to at least get a tiebreaker into playoffs. could not get it done. And Nukeduck and Upset, at least there's that inherent synergy when they were on Schalke and lost in the finals to Fnatic. So even though there's a lot of roster changes, there's some synergy there, but still not enough to be fully confident. There's still some question marks. Xerxes sometimes takes time to get going. I need to wait and see these guys on the Rift before you can talk about them being a top 3. But one of the criminally underrated guys on the squad is Alphari, who was far and away the most consistent player, even when they were struggling in the summer split, and absolutely has the potential to, as we already mentioned, be a top 3 top laner. You could cert him right behind guys like Bwipo and Wonder. He can absolutely has the potential to be top 3, and in his early days with Misfits, he was always on tank duty, playing the Maokai, and that was just kind of the meta back then, but he can absolutely play the carries. Jax is a fantastic pocket pick of his, and we'll see how the synergy goes with Xerxes and Alphari, because we know there was less attention given to Vizicachi on that spliced lineup. It was all about the mid and bottom lane. But you gotta show Alphari some love, because he has shown and is proven that he can snowball a lot of these leads. So the combo of the top side of the map, the synergy that's gonna be developed between Alphari and Xerxes is gonna be one of the key contributing factors to whether or not Origen can finish maybe even higher than top 4. I think it'd be absolutely insane to put them any lower. That's the lowest that I was comfortable putting them, and again, you could argue for that top 3 spot, but because of so many sweeping changes, you might be a little hesitant. And Nukeduck, I mean, you compare him to basically every other mid laner that's playing in the LEC this year. He is the only remaining old guard. They've either gone to NA or retired. Now it's Caps, and I was going to say Perks, who is not a mid laner, but now it's Caps that's kind of the other veteran mid laner that you're playing in Europe, a guy who came around and debuted in Season 7, which is absolutely insane, seeing as Nukeduck went to Season 3 Worlds, and Origen does now have Alphari, Xerxes, and Nukeduck, 3 players that have all gone to a World Championship. I truly hope that Upset gets the opportunity to play on the international stage, because he's the only one on this roster who hasn't. Destiny, 2 Worlds play-ins he has partaken in, so it's just Upset on this roster, which is kind of crazy. Probably the best player on the squad is the only one who has really 0 international experience, and they'll be looking to change that in 2020. Origen has good odds to make Worlds this year. That's all the time today for League Unlocked. My name's Eric. Thank you guys for hanging out. We'll see you next time.